look, he's. I agree with you in terms of his ability to comfort the mom of a fallen soldier, but the stakes that we're talking about, right? I mean,
are huge.
Are huge.
Huge.
You know,
Millions of people.
The world will recover from his inability to function like a normal human being when it comes to just being able to say, "I'm sorry about the loss of your son who died in," putting aside the sort of the validity of the exercise that he was in. But my concern is like, where is that line? Like, at what point?
Well, we were already past it. I mean, I tweeted something that Dan Glickman, a former Secretary of Agriculture, he was once during a presidential administration designated as the designated survivor, and the nuclear football followed him, and he wrote a piece in Politico the other day that said that he shouldn't have had that power. No single person should have that power, even though you anticipate, well, the reason that the president has it and you have the short-term decision-making is in case the United States is attacked in an all-out attack. But Donald Trump is a very different kind of person, and it's making a lot of people question whether this man on his own should have the singular authority to launch nuclear weapons at anyone. And I think we need to rethink that immediately.
Right, but he does, and it doesn't appear that people are. And I guess the question is there, look, Lindsey Graham I saw on television a couple of months ago saying if there's a war if there's a war in the Korean Peninsula, it's not going to really impact us.
Lindsey Graham is wrong. It will create a global depression. It'll create a global collapse of confidence forever in the United States. I mean, people don't understand that what is happening in the world right now, and people may not be familiar with the Suez Crisis in basically 1952-53, but it's essentially when Britain disappeared as the global power that mattered most in the world, and it just became apparent the United States emerged. And one of these crises is going to be that for the United States, where China rises and it then becomes the kind of global guarantor on climate, global guarantor on market liberalism in the world in a bizarre way, because it's not a liberal country. And you're going to have the United States essentially become much smaller and much less significant. And I don't know where that's going to happen. I just sense that it is coming because of Donald Trump's leadership and whatnot. Maybe that's too cosmic for folks to imagine, but we're going into an era where the United States is going to have less leverage and less power than it has traditionally had in decades in the modern era. And as part of that, the kind of ego anxiety of America becoming more diminished is a reckless guy with nuclear weapons. And I think that is very, very worrisome. And
that's my biggest concern.
We don't know whether he's going to use them or not use them, but should he use them, the notion that we are somehow immune and that Lindsey Graham said, hey, it doesn't really matter to us anyway, when you've got Japan, Korea, and basically 40% of the global economy over there in which we're deeply involved, yes, it will deeply impact the United States. Well, deeply impact the United States.
Not to mention the millions of lives
lost. Hundreds of thousands of Americans being killed.
And not even, Lindsey Graham may not value the life on the Korean Peninsula if they're not American, but I think most people do. But I guess my concern is this, and I share your concern. Like the vision. I mean, I'm not sure. I think there are arguments about the value of the United States maintaining its the position it's had in the world. But what I'm very concerned about is the idea of a diminished United States where its population presumes the same power, but it's only there now. Instead of soft power, it ends up having to be just using this big stick that we happen to have. People won't respect us in the same way, and we won't be able to do certain things, but we're still going to have this massive club that people are going to be looking to use more, which concerns me. But leaving that aside for a moment, in your estimation,
that's not real power. That's desperate power.
Exactly.
You're not a superpower anymore when you're using military power to throw your weight around the world, and it doesn't earn your trust and respect. The mystique of America's superpower in the world was shattered with the Iraq invasion, in my view. And I think that we're doubling down on that stuff. So,
well, here's the question: are there more people today Lindsey Graham may have said that a couple of months ago. Are there more people today and across party lines who are beginning to take the position that, hey, you know what? We got to do something right now. We've got to dislodge them before they get the capacity to deliver a nuclear weapon via missile to California. I mean, are there more people in?
Yes, there are more people who worry that they believe that the United States cannot allow the nexus, the intersection of North Korea's ability to miniaturize nuclear warheads and install them on long-range intercontinental ballistic missiles, that needs to be preempted at all costs. There's another group of experts, both in Japan, South Korea, the United States, and elsewhere, that said we've come to a point where we have to get back to classic deterrence, and North Korea is going to have these nuclear weapons, and if they use them, they'll be annihilated, and if they don't, they won't. And get back to the fact that we have to somehow acquiesce to the fact that they're going to have this nuclear capacity, and we're going to have to live with it. And that's where the Jeff Lewis's and other armscontrolwonk.com and others, he's a great analyst, and I think perhaps your Cirencionis and other people are in that spot as well. And then I think that there's another group that says if we're thinking about either living with North Korea with a bomb or bombing the hell out of North Korea with nuclear weapons, that there's this middle ground of diplomacy, of trying something like the Iran deal, of doing something that would basically not fully pay off North Korea for its bad behavior, but frame its situation in a way that Barack Obama got the world together before the Iran deal happened. All of that middle stuff, which James Mattis said is important, that we had lots of room to run on the diplomatic front, Donald Trump is dismantling. That's what's crazy about this, is that the President of the United States is investing zero in trying to make the diplomatic options work. And he's dismantling and undermining his own Secretary of State and other efforts out there that allies or that Europe or that Japan might want to make were not happening. So we're being stuck in a binary choice between live with North Korea with a bomb or bomb them. That's what and that is what Washington, when you ask what is the conventional wisdom, I think D.C. is alarmed at this, but more and more people still remain convinced that you can't allow North Korea to have the capacity to deliver a warhead to the west coast of the United States.
So are you hearing more people going around saying this is something we got to anticipate?
Yeah, I mean, that is why people who are knowledgeable and thoughtful, regardless of political party, from Corker to James Brennan, are saying they're seeing the risks of war with North Korea increase dramatically, from like 3% or 4% to 25% to 40%. I mean, that's amazing, and that is what is scary right now.
And so, and there's really, I mean, this feels like there's very little that, like, as the people listening to this conversation, there's very little that we can do about this at this point.
Well, I think there are a couple of things. One, there's an element where there's still doubt that President Trump has the capacity to I mean, I hate saying these things, but there is this. If President Trump is serious about an overt step towards war with North Korea, then you're going to begin to see things happening. You're going to see the Department of Defense begin to pre-position a lot more material there. And then one step in that direction was what they announced last week, is that he wants, bombers to again be carrying around 24-hour, beyond 24-hour alert. This is something we took years to stop, but he wants to bring bombers back on, fully loaded with nuclear weapons, up 24 hours a day. That's a very bad step. So that's one step that they're taking in the wrong direction. But you would see a lot of other prepositioning of military force in the region, and you'd also begin to see Seoul, Korea empty out. And you would see, when you begin getting towards the real now we haven't seen those things yet, so that's something to be heartened by. But I worry that Donald Trump will use. North Korea is reckless. North Korea does crazy things, and it has been threatening to test a hydrogen bomb over the open ocean in the Pacific. Should that happen, I don't know what Donald Trump will do. And in that situation, he won't have had to preposition a lot of military support. They just strike him with something, and then see where the escalation goes. That's his style. Throw a grenade into something, see how it goes. But in every scenario that we've played out before, 1 million or more people die in that, because you end up with this escalation with North Korea and South Korea that just decimates Seoul in a very short period of time, no matter what may happen and result in North Korea.
Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos